Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into the world of malware, specifically the art of anti-detection. We're going to uncover how hackers make their malicious code invisible.
It's a constantly evolving game of cat and mouse.
We'll be breaking down an article called Art of Anti-Detection 1. It focuses on something called meterpreter payloads.
Think of a meterpreter payload as a hacker's toolbox for controlling an infected machine.
Okay, so not good. What could a hacker do if they got a meterpreter payload onto my computer?
They could potentially steal your data, spy on you, even take control of your computer remotely.
That's why we're doing this deep dive, right? To understand these threats. The article starts by explaining why those classic malware tricks like obfuscation and packers aren't as effective as they used to be.
Exactly. Obfuscation is like scrambling a message. It's harder to read, but the message is still there. Packers compress malware, making it smaller.
So it's about making it smaller and less noticeable.
Yes, but antivirus programs are catching on. They can often spot these tricks.
So how do antivirus programs see through these disguises?
It's all about behavior. Think of someone trying to sneak into a building. They might wear a disguise, but if they start picking locks, it's suspicious.
So even if the code is disguised, the way it acts can still trigger antivirus programs.
Exactly. The article mentions in-memory execution as a red flag. This means the malware runs from your computer's memory, not the hard drive. It's a common evasion tactic.
Sneaky. But the antivirus programs are getting smarter. The article also mentions heuristic engines. What are those?
Heuristic engines are the detectives of the antivirus world. They analyze behavior to identify suspicious activity. They look for things that seem out of place.
So they're looking for anything unusual, even if they haven't seen that specific malware before.
Exactly. If a program suddenly tries to access your webcam or change important settings, that's suspicious. It's like sneaking a cookie before dinner. You might get away with it, but it's suspicious.
Great analogy. What other things might malware do that would set off these heuristic alarms?
Things like reading system information without a good reason, changing system settings, or using a lot of memory for no reason.
So even if the malware tries to blend in, those subtle actions can give it away.
Yes. And this is where it gets even more interesting, because hackers are always finding new ways to hide these behaviors.
Okay, you've got my attention. Tell me more about these advanced techniques.
One method is called hiding in plain sight. Instead of encrypting all the malicious code, hackers hide small bits of it within a normal program.
So it's like hiding a secret message in a picture frame.
Exactly. It's very difficult for traditional antivirus scanners to detect.
Wow, that's clever, but also scary.
Yeah.
What else can they do?
Another technique involves the being debugged byte. This is a bit technical.
I love the technical details. Go for it.
When antivirus programs analyze potential threats, they run the code in a safe environment to see what it does. This being debugged byte is like a signal that someone is watching.
So it's like a burglar alarm for malware. It knows when it's being watched.
Exactly. By changing this byte, hackers can make their malware go dormant when it's being analyzed so it doesn't get detected.
Wow, it's like something out of a spy movie.
Yeah.
But what happens when the malware is out in the real world? How does it avoid being detected then?
That's where the real skill of anti-detection comes in. Hackers use the limitations of antivirus software to their advantage. Remember how we talked about heuristic engines? They're designed to work quickly, so they can't spend forever analyzing every single program.
That makes sense. Otherwise, our computers would be incredibly slow.
Exactly. Hackers know this and exploit it. One tactic is to create fake actions to distract the antivirus program.
Fake actions, like what?
Imagine your malware is disguised as a harmless program, but hidden inside are instructions to do pointless things, like searching for files that don't exist or opening and closing connections repeatedly.
So it's creating a distraction, a smokescreen, so the antivirus program doesn't see the real threat.
Precisely. While the antivirus is busy with those fake tasks, the real malicious code can slip past unnoticed.
That is seriously sneaky. But it sounds like a delicate balancing act for the hackers. They only have a limited amount of time to execute their plan before the antivirus catches on, right?
You're absolutely right. The more complex the distractions, the more time they buy. But if they're too suspicious, they'll trigger those heuristic alarms.
It's like they need to find the sweet spot between being stealthy and blending in. The malware needs to look innocent, but also do its thing before being discovered.
Exactly. And to make things even trickier, some malware uses a technique called multitasking to further hide its activity.
Multitasking malware. What is that?
Imagine the malware running harmless tasks in the foreground while it does something malicious in the background.
So it's like talking to someone while they're secretly texting on their phone.
That's a great way to put it. This multitasking makes it incredibly difficult for antivirus programs to tell the good from the bad. There's just so much going on. It's like trying to find a specific firefly in a field full of flashing lights.
Wow, that's a powerful image. You're right, it would be almost impossible to find. So is there any hope for us? How can we protect ourselves against all of this?
Don't worry, it's not hopeless. The first step is understanding these techniques. Knowledge is power.
That's reassuring. But what practical steps can we take?
First, you need a good antivirus program and keep it updated. That's your first line of defense.
Okay, makes sense. But what about those brand new threats, the ones antivirus programs haven't seen before? What about those?
That's where those heuristic engines come in. They can often spot suspicious behavior even if they don't recognize the specific malware. But even beyond antivirus, it's about having good digital hygiene.
Digital hygiene. Like the sound of that. Tell me more.
It's all about being careful and thoughtful online. Be wary of suspicious emails or links. If something seems off, don't click on it.
Good advice. Don't click on anything from people you don't know, especially if it sounds too good to be true.
Exactly. And be careful about what you download and install. Stick to official sources.
So no downloading that free game from a shady website.
Right. Those too good to be true downloads are often how malware gets onto your computer. And always use strong, unique passwords.
Right. Using a password manager can help with that. It can create and remember those super complicated passwords for you.
Definitely. A password manager is a great investment. It's like a digital vault for all your important information. And speaking of vaults, remember how the article mentioned something called a PE backdoor?
Yeah, it sounded ominous.
Yeah.
Is that where digital hygiene comes in?
Understanding how a PE backdoor works can definitely help you appreciate good digital hygiene. Instead of just getting past your defenses, a PE backdoor is like leaving a secret entrance open for the hacker to come back whenever they want.
Wait, so even if I have a strong password and I'm careful about what I click on, if I accidentally install a PE backdoor, a hacker can still get in.
It shows how important those proactive security measures are. Remember those suspicious behaviors we talked about? Installing a PE backdoor would definitely raise some red flags. But instead of going into the technical details of how to spot a PE backdoor, let's focus on what it means if you have one.
Okay, I'm listening. Because a hacker having a backdoor to my computer sounds like something I definitely want to know about.
Imagine you're working on something confidential, like financial documents or business plans. With a PE backdoor, a hacker could steal that information without you knowing.
It's like having a hidden camera in your office, except it's your own computer spying on you.
Exactly. And that's not all. Because a PE backdoor is so stealthy, you might not even know you've been compromised until it's too late.
This is why I love and hate these deep dives. We're talking about some pretty scary stuff. But enough of the scary stories. Let's talk solutions.
That's the spirit. Remember, knowledge is power.
So it's not just about antivirus software. It's about being aware of the risks and taking steps to protect ourselves.
You got it. It's like wearing your seatbelt. You hope you never need it, but you're glad you have it if you do. It's the same with digital security.
Great analogy. But this article is from 2016. That's ancient history in the tech world. I can only imagine how much more advanced these techniques are now.
That's a great point, and it leads to a really interesting question. If these techniques were being used back then, imagine how much more advanced they must be now.
It's both fascinating and a little terrifying. It's like those spy movies where they reveal the villain's lair, and it's full of advanced technology. Except instead of lasers and sharks, we're talking about code and digital tricks.
Exactly. And just like in those movies, the good guys have to stay one step ahead. Think about how much technology has changed in just a few years. We have AI, machine learning, the Internet of Things, all these incredible advancements, but they also create new opportunities for attacks.
So it's a constant back and forth battle. Every time we create a new technology, we're also creating new ways for it to be exploited. It's like for every digital lock we make, someone is already working on a way to pick it.
You got it. The important thing to remember is that cybersecurity is not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. You need to stay informed, adapt to new threats, and be proactive.
It's almost like a game of chess, isn't it? We make a move to protect ourselves, they counter with a new attack.
That's a great way to look at it. And that's why it's so important to stay ahead of the game, to understand the threats and how they're evolving, the more we know, the better prepared we can be.
I completely agree. So where do we go from here? If these techniques were already in use back in 2016, what does the future hold for malware and anti-detection?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, think about all the technological advancements we've seen just in the past few years. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, the Internet of Things. It's incredible.
It is incredible, but it also creates new opportunities for hackers. Those advancements also introduce new vulnerabilities.
Right. Every new technology is a double-edged sword. It brings new possibilities, but also new risks.
Exactly. And that's why the cybersecurity landscape is constantly changing. What works today might not work tomorrow.
So how can we possibly keep up? It feels like a never-ending battle.
It is a constant battle, but it's not one we can afford to lose. And thankfully, there are people and organizations dedicated to fighting it. Security researchers, ethical hackers, and software developers are constantly working to develop new and better ways to protect ourselves.
That's good to hear. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all. In fact, I think it's an exciting time to be involved in cybersecurity. There are so many challenges, so many opportunities to learn and grow.
I can see how it would be exciting for people who are passionate about technology and security. But for those of us who aren't tech experts, what can we do to protect ourselves? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
The most important thing is to be aware. Understand that threats exist and that they're constantly evolving, but don't panic. There are steps you can take to protect yourself.
Like what? Give us the rundown.
Well, we've talked about some of them already. Having a good antivirus program and keeping it updated is crucial.
Right, that's like Security 101.
It is, but it's still essential. And beyond that, it's about practicing good digital hygiene. Be careful about what websites you visit, what emails you open, what links you click on. Be cautious about what you download and where you download it from.
So basically, don't click on anything suspicious and don't download anything from sources you don't trust.
That's a good rule of thumb. And if something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Like those free software offers or those you've won a prize emails.
Exactly. Those are often scams designed to trick you into installing malware or giving up personal information. And speaking of personal information, make sure you're using strong, unique passwords for all of your accounts.
When I say strong, I mean really strong, not just password 123.
Definitely not. A strong password should be at least 12 characters long, with a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols.
And don't use the same password for multiple accounts.
Exactly. If one account is compromised, you don't want all of your accounts to be vulnerable.
Makes sense. And what about password managers? Those can be helpful, right?
Absolutely. Password managers can generate and store strong passwords for you so you don't have to remember them all.
That's a lifesaver. I don't know what I'd do without my password manager.
They're incredibly useful, and the good ones use strong encryption to protect your passwords, so it's very secure.
Okay, that's good to know. So to recap, good antivirus, strong passwords, and be cautious about what you click on and download. What else?
Those are the basics, and they'll go a long way toward keeping you safe. But there are other things you can do to enhance your security even further.
Like what? Give us the pro tips.
One thing you can do is enable two-factor authentication whenever possible.
Oh yeah, two-factor authentication. That's where they send you a code to your phone or email, right?
Exactly. It adds an extra layer of security because even if someone gets your password, they still need that second factor to access your account.
That's a great point. I need to start using that more often. I admit sometimes it feels like a hassle, but it's worth it for the extra security.
Definitely worth it. And another thing you can do is be careful about what information you share online.
Like on social media?
Yes, social media, but also online forums, chat rooms, even online games.
With online games? Hackers can target you through online games.
Absolutely. It's called social engineering, and it's a very common tactic. Hackers might pose as a fellow gamer, try to befriend you, and then trick you into giving up personal information or downloading malware.
Wow, I never thought about that. I guess it just goes to show that you can never be too careful online.
That's exactly right. The internet can be a wonderful place, but it's also important to be aware of the risks.
Okay, so we've got good antivirus, strong passwords, two-factor authentication, and being mindful of what we share online. Is there anything else?
Well, one more thing I'd add is to stay informed. The cybersecurity landscape is constantly changing, so it's important to stay up to date on the latest threats and vulnerabilities.
So how do we do that? Should we be reading cybersecurity blogs and articles every day?
You don't have to become a cybersecurity expert overnight, but it's a good idea to follow some reputable sources. There are great websites, blogs, podcasts, and social media accounts that share news and information about cybersecurity.
Like the deep dive. We'll be sure to share some of our favorite resources in the show notes. So it sounds like the key takeaway here is vigilance. We need to be aware of the risks, take steps to protect ourselves, and stay informed about new threats.
Exactly. It's about being proactive, not reactive. You don't want to wait until you're a victim of a cyber attack to start thinking about your security.
That's a great point. It's like they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. And when it comes to cybersecurity, that's definitely true.
Well said. Well, this has been an incredibly informative deep dive, albeit a little unnerving at times. But I think it's important to have these conversations to shine a light on these threats so we can better protect ourselves.
I agree. Knowledge is power, and the more we know about these threats, the better equipped we'll be to defend against them.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay safe out there in the digital world.
Well said. And until next time, stay curious.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored the fascinating and sometimes unsettling world of malware and anti-detection. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the evolution of malware, the cat-and-mouse game between hackers and security researchers. We've discussed specific techniques like hiding code in plain sight, creating those decoy actions, even that being debugged byte. It's amazing how much effort goes into making malware invisible.
It's a testament to the creativity and persistence of hackers, unfortunately.
It really is. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is that cybersecurity is not just about having the latest software. It's about being aware, being proactive, and constantly learning and adapting.
I completely agree. You can have the most sophisticated security tools in the world, but they're useless if you're not using them correctly or if you're not aware of the threats in the first place.
Exactly. It's like having a state-of-the-art security system in your home, but leaving the front door wide open.
Perfect analogy. Security is a combination of technology and human behavior. We need to use both effectively to protect ourselves.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to our listeners, something they can take away and start implementing today to improve their cybersecurity?
If I had to pick just one, I'd say it's this. Be skeptical. Don't just click on links, open attachments, or download software without thinking. Question everything. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
That's great advice. Trust your gut, and if something feels off, it probably is.
Exactly. And if you're ever unsure about something, don't be afraid to ask for help. Talk to a tech-savvy friend, family member, or colleague. There are also plenty of online resources available, like the websites and organizations we'll link to in the show notes.
Perfect. We'll be sure to share those resources with our listeners. Well, I think we've covered just about everything we can about malware anti-detection, at least for one episode.
It's a topic we could probably talk about for hours.
Definitely. But we'll save that for another deep dive. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise.
It was my pleasure. Always happy to talk about cybersecurity.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to The Deep Dive. We hope you found this episode informative and maybe even a little bit empowering. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more you know about the threats out there, the better equipped you'll be to protect yourself. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe.